All right, well, thank you all for joining us today. This is the very first Data Visioner webinar, so we're really excited to have you all here, and also to have people from all around the world. Last check, we had more than 15 countries with people coming along today. So that included the US, Canada, Austria, Denmark, India, Cameroon, so we're really spanning the globe. I know there's a few people still connecting, so we're just going to wait a couple of minutes and then we're going to kick off. All right, so let's kick off. Today we're going to be talking about business intelligence, and in particular self-service BI and some of its perils. So whether you're just starting out with Power BI or you've got years of experience in this space, we really hope the content is going to be of value to you. So some quick introductions. I'm Tim, one of the co-founders of Data Visioner and the host for today. And with me is Suhail Bakashi, one of our other co-founders, Microsoft MVP and business intelligence thought leader. If you're not already following his blog, be sure to check out biinsight.com. There's lots of really great posts around BI and Power BI there. So for today's session, we're going to be talking through a few things. The first is how access to data empowers your organization to create and share insights, and the challenges and risks that come with this. Real world scenarios where projects have gone wrong and what to watch out for as you make data more accessible in your organization. And why governance is increasingly important when it comes to managing risk and what this means to you and your business. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we move forward. If you have questions throughout the webinar, we'd really encourage you to submit them via the Q&A button that should be on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll collate some of them for at the very end of the webinar and run through those. And for any that we don't have time to get to, we'll follow them up after the webinar. Also, if there's any audio or visual issues, this is the first webinar that we've run via Microsoft Teams, so do let us know via the chat and we'll do our very best to resolve them as we go. So I'm going to give a really quick overview and set the scene, and then pass over to Suhail, the person that you're really here to hear from. Traditionally, enterprise data has been really tightly controlled within an organization. You'd typically go to your IT or BI team and they would help you get insights from your data. And these people would be specialists. They'd know how clean the data is that you're working with. They'd understand data governance. They'd know how to efficiently use that data. And that's probably describing many of the people connected to this webinar today, as you really understand data. But as BI capabilities are becoming more accessible and businesses are becoming more data driven, we've moved to this world where people throughout the organization need access to data directly. And this is what we refer to as self-service business intelligence. It's really essential, but you have to be really careful around how you manage the risks associated with this increased accessibility. So to talk a little bit more about this, I'm going to hand over to Suhail.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon from wherever you are connected to our webinar today. And thanks for joining us today. As Tim introduced me, I'm Suhail Bakshi, and I am a Microsoft MVP. And I do blogs any now and then from time to time, and it is predominantly about business intelligence, data warehousing, and especially Power BI. So today's session is more about Power BI governance and the differences between enterprise BI and self-service BI. So self-service BI is as you may already know, is about accessing and preparing, analyzing, and visualizing your data on your own way. So it is like when you have a small business and you have 4, 5, 6 people that are working in that business, and you are sharing files like Excel files, and you may not have massive databases around, and you are just creating reports on top of your files, so you can share those files together, and you can create your files. So you will access your file, you will prepare that data and analyze it and then visualize it. But it is all your own data. But with Enterprise BI, things are a little bit different. You still access the data that is prepared, analyzed, and visualized for you. So you access your organization's data in more efficient, controlled, and safe ways. These general points are altogether called governance. Let's imagine having a big enterprise which you are enabling self-service BI without any sort of governance. If you do not apply governance, it will be equal to sort of explosion. I know this is a little bit exaggeration, but in real world it can be the case. So let's talk about known risks of running ungoverned self-service BI in enterprises. So you will face data quality issues. Poor data quality is one of the most popular downsides of running self-service BI without any sort of governance. Let me give you an example. Just imagine that you are working in a large organization and you are storing files, especially Excel files, in your own OneDrive. And by your own OneDrive, I'm talking about OneDrive for business, but on your account. So you're not storing it in a shared space like SharePoint or something like that. You are actually storing your data, your organization's data, in OneDrive for business, but in your personal OneDrive, in your personal space. And then you create some reports in Power BI and you share it with other people. Has that your data been ever audited, reviewed, or reconciled? Maybe not. The second risk is, which is a big one, is data leakage. Just imagine that you have a big organization that people can access your data, and they can analyze the data, they can create Power BI reports. That's really pretty cool, right? But what happens if someone mistakenly or deliberately share that data in public space? Just think about it. You are publishing your reports into Power BI service, right? And then what happens if someone shares one report, which is confidential, which includes confidential data, it has sensitive data in it, in a public website? It is possible, right? If you do not have control and governance, people may do it, right? And it causes data leakage, which can cause really big problems. Actually, I have a true story about the data leakage. I was working in a project on 2015 and in a big enterprise, and I was getting there into customer site every week on Wednesdays. In one Wednesday, before Wednesday, in a Tuesday, I received an email from our contact person saying, "Hey, Sohail, please can you do not come on site tomorrow?" And I was like, "But why is that?" I called him and he said, "Hey, what's happening? What's wrong?" He said, "Well, I cannot talk about this over the phone." And I said, "Okay, so what about meeting and talking over a cup of coffee. He said, yes, why not? And I got there and we understood that the whole system is shut down and police started an investigation just because of data leakage. Someone copied the organization's data in Excel file, and who knows what happened next. So data leakage is something that must be considered as a very important thing. The next point is untrusted data sources. Untrusted data sources, I already gave you an example, like Excel files that have never been reconciled or audited, or you haven't done enough sanity checks. They haven't been peer reviewed in your organizations by anyone, right? So, but you may have a SQL database and you have created a data warehouse, right? That data warehouse, you know, the expectation is that the data warehouse or all the data movement have been already audited and reconciled several times in every single step of the way. The other point of enabling self-service BI without governance is inaccurate data analysis. Just imagine, okay, so I have good quality data and I protected it, and it is coming from a trusted data source, but I'm creating an analysis layer on top of it, right? When I create a measure, I'm creating an analysis, right, on top of my data. And so if that measure that I created in Power BI, if it doesn't act like it is intended to do, then that's no good, you know. The next point, which is quite important one, is undocumented assets. Just imagine that you are working in an organization and you are creating a lot of Power BI reports. If you do not have proper documentation, then handing over all of those reports to someone else will be really time-consuming process. And I'm telling you, you will never do that. You know, I've been there, and maybe a lot of you guys have guys and girls have been there many times. That when someone is leaving an organization, a big part of organization's asset is leaving with them, which is information and their knowledge over the data. So documentation is a big important part of your government processes. The next part is long and complex handover, which I already touched at. So, but long handover. So let me tell you another real story. I was working on a project, and the project just finished. And before finishing the project, I had to leave to another project, right? And another consultant took over the part that I was doing, and unfortunately, I didn't have enough time, because everyone knows that documentation is quite time-consuming and tedious work. So I didn't have time, and I sacrificed documentation. After a month, the other consultant, set up a meeting, called for a meeting, and we went to the meeting and we sat together, and guess what? I couldn't remember what I've done in all of those Power BI reports. And it took a long time to hand over, because we had to open every single file, go through Power Query, steps to see in every single step what I've done, and then we had to go through the data layer and looking at the relationships and the semantic layer, and then data visualization, and so on and so forth. So that can be really long, complex, and and as a consequence, quite expensive activity. Inefficient and costly support and maintenance. If you want to maintain your Power BI reports and you don't have proper documentation, right, it would be really costly to support and maintain, because different people will support the system that you have already built, right? And those people are not necessarily the developers of the system, right? So it will take a lot of time for them to look at the reports, look at the M queries again, and your relationships, understand everything, and to maintain those reports and to support the reports. Accessing and permission management issues. So if you can access the data that you are not intended to accessing that data, then that's a big governance issue. So like if I'm working in the BI department, then I don't really need to access finance and HR data unless I'm working on a project that is relevant. And performance issues. If you are not following best practices in Power BI development, then obviously you will face performance issues. Everyone is talking about Power BI and we always say that Power BI is quite efficient data analysis and data visualization tool, right? It is correct, but if you have been using it on the right way, if you have done a good data modeling, if you have done a good and proper M queries, in the Power Query layer, then you will get the best performance. Otherwise, well, you don't. The last part, last but not least, is reinventing the wheel continuously. So you may create a lot of reports across the organization, and after a while, if you look at the reports that you have generated and your colleagues have generated and your other colleagues in other departments have generated, you may find out a lot of overlaps. You may find out, oh, actually, this part of the report that I was scratching my head for, I don't know, 2 days to find out how to resolve that issue or how to write that complex measure in DAX have been done before across the organization. Someone else have done something quite similar, but I'm reinventing the wheel because I don't know. I don't know that it exists. So again, with a proper documentation, you can avoid these risks. Let's talk a little bit about Power BI governance in a nutshell. A good governance model defines practices, documentation, and responsibilities which ensure efficient and secure usage of Power BI platform. So it is not just about access right, it is not just about documentation, it is not just about certified data sources, certified data sets, classification, it is all of it. So Power BI defines roles. So in a Power BI ecosystem, you will have many different roles. If you're just looking at the people that are interacting with reports, you will have at least Power BI developers, you will have Power BI consumers, report consumers, and contributors, right? So Power BI report developers are those ones who access the data in a secured way, and then they prepare the data and they put it, they make a data set, so they publish it to Power BI service and they make it available for the rest of people to create their own reports, right? People that are creating the reports on top of the data set that report developers have created, they are contributors, because they are contributing in generating more content for the organization. And consumers are those ones who are only consuming the reports, right? Like top managers, I don't know, finance manager, CEO of an organization. So, but it is not the only, those are not the only roles that we have. So in Power BI, you have Power BI administrators. You may have more than one Power BI administrator, and you may have Office 365 administrator, you may have auditors, you may have a lot of different roles. So it is a big topic by itself. Next one is certified data sources. Okay, I touched on this previously, but what is certified data source? Well, a lot of organizations have different levels to define their data sources. It can be bronze, silver, and platinum or gold, right? So bronze is data that have never been sanitized. It has never been reconciled, and no one audited that data. So we know that those type of data exist in our organization, right? But we are creating a good governance to cover everything as an umbrella over everything, over all of the organization assets. And silver can be a SQL Server or Oracle or Teradata database, but the data in it can have a little bit of quality issues, and it may be partially audited but not completely audited, haven't been QA'd, and there is a lot of data which is not efficient for reporting, right? Or you may even have a data warehouse, but you are not you cannot call it gold or platinum, because data quality is not that good, and you know that. So we and in an organization know what our data is. And platinum can be your semantic layer. So an SSAS tabular model, which you create on top of your data warehouse, or analysis services multidimensional. So you pass all of the data quality, auditing, system testing, unit testing, all of those sort of things to create a unique source of truth across the organization that everyone can trust and can use. So don't get confused by certified data sources and certified data sets. Certified data sets are those ones that you already created in Power BI and you publish to Power BI service, right? But certified data sources are actually your source systems. So the source that you are using in Power BI. Next part is documentation. So you must have rules across documentation. You have to tell your Power BI developers that, hey, look, you must document your Power BI reports and files that you are generating. And actually, I am still working on a project that documentation was a big chunk of it. And a Power BI report documentation can include a lot of things. I'm telling you, it can get really, really big. So for a non-large report, the report had about 15 report pages. The documentation was over 100 pages, right? Because it must include all of your the queries that you perhaps run, on your source systems, type of source system, how you can actually access the source systems, either it is SQL Server, regardless of type of the source system. If it is SQL Server, if it is Excel, it is Access, whatever it is, you need to document it, because the next person who is going to support it must have that type of information, otherwise they cannot support it, right? Then you must include all your M queries and your data model, all the relationships, all measures, DAX expressions that you use to create measures, calculated columns, calculated tables, RLS, everything. You have to put everything in a document and make it available, because this is organization's asset. This is organization's data, organization's asset. So you can quickly hand it over to the next person to support it, or if you are leaving that organization, then the knowledge of the organization remains within the organization. The next part is monitoring. A good governance across Power BI ecosystem must contain a good monitoring system, which luckily we have a very good monitoring system in Power BI service. If you go to Power BI admin portal, you can see usage metrics and those things. Next part is security. How you secure your data, and it is not only about your data which is in Power BI. Your data in Power BI is encrypted when you especially when you publish it to Power BI service. But it is also about securing your data sources, databases, and everything. So the whole environment must be secure. And architecture. Architecture is a big part of the governance, because there are different architecture in Power BI ecosystem. You may come up with, you may say, okay, so Power BI free edition works fine for me, right? I really don't need to install the gateway, or I really don't need to refresh my data sets 5 times a day or something. So I really don't need any of those pro features. So I want to go with free. So governance around Power BI free is very, very different from any other type of architecture that you can implement on Power BI. Next type of architecture is Power BI Pro, right? So you pay approximately $10 US per month per user, and you get 10 gigabytes of cloud space, and you can share it across the share different reports and dashboards across the organization, and so on and so forth. So the architecture now in pro level is different from free. Next one is Power BI Embedded, which you can embed your reports into a software that you are developing, or into your SharePoint site, or into your website, right? But in a secure way, and people can access the data based on their credentials and their authentication, right? So if I connect to a website, I log in, which and that website includes some embedded reports from Power BI, I will be only able to see the data that is relevant to me, right? And the next architecture is Power BI Premium. So you buy Power BI Premium, and you can share the reports within the organization and outside of the organization, and you can embed the report, and you will get a dedicated capacity in the cloud, and you can have incremental data loading, and a lot of different features are unlocked in Power BI Premium. So again, the governance around Power BI, if you are implementing Power BI Premium, is different from all other architectures that I already spoke about. That is pretty much it. So just keep in mind that today's session, like how Tim called, is our first webinar, and it was all about governance 101. So if you have any questions, please put that in the Q&A section on your right side.
Cool. So we do have a few questions here, but before we jump into that, Sahal's covered some really useful things to consider as you look at governance and self-service BI. In particular, the importance of documentation, and that's one of the things that we focus on here at Data Visionist. So Power BI Documenter, which is our key product, helps you to document, review, and improve your Power BI reports. So some form of a documentation tool should be a key component of your BI stack. So if you don't have one, or you've got questions around how to bring that in, do feel free to reach out to us via the website afterwards. You can send us an email, you can talk to us on live chat, whatever works best for you. So the first question we've got here is, will there be a recording of the webinar? So yes, that's something I don't think we covered off at the beginning, but we are recording it. So we'll make sure a recording is accessible later today or tomorrow. So the second question, if I'm a small business, do I need to be thinking about this level of governance? What's sort of the level of governance needed between a small business versus a university or a larger scale enterprise, and how do I sort of manage that?
Yeah, well, as I said, it really depends on the architecture that you are picking for your business. So if you are talking about a very small business that you really don't need to have a even Power BI Pro, and you are going with Power BI free, then you may have a very light governance, but it is still can be there. You still need to document your Power BI reports. You still need to have trusted data sources. You still need to have some sort of certification processes for your data sources. So if you have, I don't know, 500 Excel files that you don't know where they are, then that by itself can be a problem, right? So it really depends on the architecture that you are picking.
Yeah, I think probably, although the question was from someone who's obviously in a smaller organization, I think it's probably equally applicable to people who are maybe a smaller team within a large organization as well, and working out how to best resource that and access the right knowledge to achieve those goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a question here. Is best practices a part of governance? Yes, it is. The answer is yes, big time it is. You know, if you do not follow best practices, although you will create documentation, you have a proper handover process, a proper data source certification, whatever, you still need to follow best practices. Otherwise, you will face performance issues. You will face perhaps even data leakage if you're not following best practices. So again, that is a part of governance.
Cool. We've got a couple of other questions here that are a little more technical, so I think we'll come back to the people who submitted those after the webinar. I think there's a couple of other questions I'm sort of going to merge together here as a final question to wrap the session up. I guess in your experience, Sahel, how good would you say governance actually is in practice? And if you're working for an organization where maybe the governance isn't as great, maybe documentation isn't as good, or any of the other factors you've just mentioned, what would your first step be to, I guess, push that in the right direction?
Well, I think the first step for every organization that is running Power BI as a platform is the awareness of governance. You know, I've worked in organizations that they really are not aware of such a thing. They think that, okay, so it is self-service BI, I can do whatever I want, and that kind of mindset creates a big resistance across the organization to change. And it would be really, it can sometimes, believe me, it can get really a big headache for the organizations to apply a good governance into their across the organization, I mean, right? So in some cases, I know that it took more than 1.5 years, and because they had to baby step, every single person which was standing in front of them, as they were saying, well, actually, I'm quite comfortable with storing some CSV files in my SharePoint drive, or my own SharePoint drive, or OneDrive for Business, but my own personal OneDrive for Business. Believe it or not, we had cases that people were creating some mechanism, right? They wrote VBA codes over Outlook to extract CSV files that they were receiving every day from a system, right? And store it somewhere in their local drive to produce financial reports and dashboards for a big organization. I'm talking about a multi-million-dollar business, right? So in those organizations, going through the governance, the awareness of such a thing, and sending the message across the organization that, hey, this is a risk to all of us, is the first step, I believe, if I answered that question.
Yeah, no, I think that should cover that off. So how? Yeah, so listen, guys, that's all we've got time for today. As I mentioned, there are a few other questions that we didn't quite get to. We'll reach out to the people who submitted those in the coming week. But once again, thank you for joining us today. We're looking at running a webinar every quarter or so keep an eye on your email. And if you're not already following us, we're on Twitter and LinkedIn. So if you track down our profiles there and follow us there, you'll be able to get any updates that come through from us. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.